Okay, we're going to start right now.
Yes.
So first of all, I would like to express my most sincere gratitude for inviting me. I think this makes a very good opportunity to exchange views, and I will be happy to answer all of your questions related to our today's topic. And it is about the recent sign of the comprehensive strategic partnership treaty between the Russian Federation and the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I think this could be recognized like a crucial point in recent international developments, not only on the regional level, but beyond. So today I will deliver a short presentation followed by the questions and answers period. So I need just to show my screen, but
Yes.
now I cannot do that because when I push the button to share, it's saying that the organizer has switched off demonstration of the screens of the participants. So I need the rights of the administrator or an administrator to demonstrate my slides, PowerPoint slides.
Hasib, can you assist Dr. Igor in that?
Yes. Yeah, excellent. So can you see the slides?
Yes, Dr. Igor, the slides are visible. You may go
Okay,
ahead.
okay, that's great. So the name of my presentation, which actually correlates with the name of the whole event, is the signing of comprehensive strategic partnership. Well, I would like to add the word treaty here between Russia and Iran. Opportunities and implications. So that's again, I would like to emphasize that it's a very important topic for today. So first of all, I would like to mention that it took several years to prepare for the signing of this important treaty between Russia and Iran, although there was another treaty signed between Iran and China. It happened on the 27th of March 2000, excuse me, not 12, but 21. So it was just a second. Yes, so it was on the 27th of March in 2000, in the year of 2021 in Tehran, and this treaty was signed between two foreign ministers of Iran and China. And you can see on this photo, so they were in mass because of the Govt. But you know, and nevertheless, that was not an obstacle to sign this treaty between China and Iran. But it took almost probably 3 years to prepare a similar treaty between Russia and Iran. And in my view, as an expert, the accelerator of this procedure to sign to speed up the whole process for the signing of this treaty between Russia and Iran turned out to be the so-called Syrian revolution, which happened in November and late December and the beginning of November and the beginning of December 2024 last year, with the hosting the regime of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. So in my view, again, I would like to emphasize this since I recognize it as the very important factor. So these Syrian developments played a significant, if not a decisive role in speeding up the whole process to reach and to sign this very important treaty between Russia and Iran. So this is why I will start from describing this Syrian factor in relation, in the light of signing this treaty between Russia and Iran. So again, recently I visited Iran. I was lucky to visit Iran during December and to speak to people representing various circles there in Tehran. So this is why I would like to share with you my opinions and expert views, referring on the conditions of the anonymity, referring to the opinions of the people in Tehran. So the Iranian experts' view on Russia's role in the Syrian events. So real and conspiracy approaches. So there are two major versions right now in Tehran about Russia's role in the Syrian events. The first one, I would like to call it version 1. So it says that Moscow could have likely agreed in advance with Ankara that it would not save the Assad regime in exchange for maintaining military bases in Syria, at least until the summer of 2025, in order to have time to redeploy the military personnel and military equipment to Libya. So that's the first version. Version number 2. Moscow did not negotiate with Ankara the future of the Assad regime, but Russia simply did not have enough military forces to stop the Syrian opposition's offensive. Otherwise, Russia needed to redeploy significant forces from the Ukrainian France. And version 3. By not preventing the overthrow of Assad, Moscow signaled readiness to a cooperative dialogue with Donald Trump. So those are three main versions, in Tehran about the Syrian development and Russia's role in those developments. To elaborate a little bit more, I would like to concentrate on the Iranian forecasts regarding Russia's further actions after the overthrow of Assad's regime in Syria. So first of all, and it's very important to emphasize here, referring to the opinions of Iranian experts, so Russian military are predicted to transfer most of personnel and equipment from the bases in Tartus and Khmeimim to Libya. Such moves could lead to an increase in the involvement of Russia in domestic conflicts in Libya, Sudan, and other African countries. So that's the Iranian view. And remarkably, it's been shared in other countries of the region, namely in the United Arab Emirates, because I managed to visit not only Iran during December, but the United Arab Emirates as well, speaking with people there. And then they expressed similar views on possible prospective Russia's role in Africa related to the recent developments in Syria. So the second point is Tehran does not rule out the prospect of establishing working cooperation with Russia on the Kurdish issue, deterring Turkey. So that's one more very important point, and it was raised by the Iranians, not by myself, but by the Iranians. Thirdly, concern is also expressed that Russia could have agreed in advance with Turkey on not supporting Bashar al-Assad. I already mentioned that before, for example, in exchange for Ankara's reluctance on supporting Ukraine. Hence, Iran fears that in the future, Russia could similarly refuse to cooperate with Iran in exchange for real concessions from Trump on Ukraine. And finally, thus a number of experts in Tehran do believe that Iran should rely on own forces, continuing attempts to negotiate a rapprochement with the United States of America instead of relying on the creation of nuclear weapons. Although there are different groups in Tehran, in Iran about that, there are people who believe from the conservative part of the political camp, they do believe that Iran should rely on nuclear weapons. And they've been asking me how would Russia view a nuclear Iran, for instance. And there is another group of pragmatics who do believe that Iran should rely on forces, but not nuclear weapons, at the same time continuing attempts to negotiate with Trump, regardless of his very tough position on Iran during his first presidency. But there are some hints in the American media about possibilities to hold some sort of a dialogue on a possible rapprochement with Iran, even under Trump, during his second presidency. Now we come to the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty itself between Russia and Iran. So is it about broadening economic cooperation or forming a military alliance? So there are different scenarios of the Russian-Iranian cooperation, regardless of the recent declarations, for instance, made by Iranian foreign minister His Excellency Abbas Araghchi about that this alliance is not going to be recognized as a military alliance, but nevertheless, much will depend upon further developments. So, the first scenario is defense cooperation becomes #1 priority, regardless of the recently mentioned declarations. For instance, if the United States and Israel escalate aggressive actions against both Iran and Russia, and the absence of deals with the Trump administration related to the Iranian nuclear program and Ukraine. In my view as an expert, it's likely. Scenario #2, economic cooperation becomes #1 priority. If Russia and Iran agree with Trump of the escalation of the Ukrainian crisis and Israel-Iran confrontation, which is unlikely in the foreseeable future, but likely by the end of 2025, much here will depend upon the talks between Netanyahu and Trump, personal talks. You know that today there's going to be a meeting between Trump and Netanyahu in Washington, and taking into consideration the lobbyist groups, the existence of influential lobbyist groups inside the US Congress in favor of Israel. Scenario #3, Iran becomes nuclear, facing neutrality of Russia. That could happen if Israel proceeds with the harsh escalation of the situation targeting Iran with the United States assistance. I think that Netanyahu will try to persuade Trump at least to demonstrate reluctance in case of Israeli actions and attacks, missile and using also aircraft attacks against Iranian military and nuclear facilities inside Iran on the Iranian territory. Which is, this scenario, by the way, is rather unlikely in my view in the short perspective. And finally, political military coordination between Russia and Iran becomes #1 priority. If both the West and Turkey totally ignore Russia's and Iran's interests in Syria, which in my view is an expert is rather unlikely in the foreseeable future. So now we come to the core question. Could the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty between Russia and Iran be considered as a real political agreement or largely a declarative act? So the preliminary answer definitely is that it is too early to evaluate the output of this treaty. However, under any scenario, it is likely to lead to a substantial enhancement and broadening of the bilateral trade and economic cooperation. This is why, anyway, it must be recognized as a very good treaty, perspective treaty being signed for a 20-year period. And also, the future of the treaty depends upon the results of 2 meetings already mentioned before between Trump and Netanyahu on February the 4th. Yes, the 4th, so today, and Putin and Trump on Ukraine, which is not scheduled yet. But there are some rumors that it could be held in the near future either in the United Arab Emirates or probably in Saudi Arabia. Not by chance, Article 45 and point 1 of the treaty stipulates that the treaty shall be subject to ratification and entry into force after 30 days from the date of the last written notification by the contracting parties of the completion of the relevant domestic procedures, and it shall be valid for 20 years with automatic renewals for consecutive 5-year periods. So again, that's very important because it's like an open window or an open door. Finally, that brings me to the end of my short presentation. And finally, I would like to invite all participants of today's event to subscribe to my Telegram channel. The name of the channel is Insight of Matveev, posting pieces of information and my expert comments on events and processes in the Middle East. So you can see here the QR code and at the same time, the reference, the link to the channel. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matveev, for your precise presentations on this recently concluded event between Russia and Iran. There are some couple of questions arising from your speech. You have said that the cooperation in the comprehensive strategic realm between Russia and China basically came into effect after the downfall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. But before that, we have also been seeing that Russia and Iran have been cooperating on the military to military basis as well as on the strategic level on two fronts at least. The first one regarding the safeguarding of Bashar al-Assad before his collapse, and the second one is the opening of international north-south transit corridor, in which Iran played a crucial role. So, how do you see all this development that before that it was some sort of a partnership that have been transformed into a treaty alliance? Would you call it a treaty alliance in this regard?
Well, thank you very much for this question. First of all, I would like to express my strictly personal point of view here as an expert, not the view of my government. I believe that they have not been, they accept the military coordination and joint military efforts during the hot stage of the Syrian conflict. So it was between the 2015 and 2018 in Syria between Russia and Iran. There have been no partnership in Syria between Russia and Iran. So there was coexistence between Russian forces on the ground and the Iranian forces on the ground. Definitely, there were some contacts, regular contacts between Russia and Iran and Syria, but there have been no partnership, especially economic partnership, in Syria. In my view, strictly personal point of view, that made one of very important reasons for the collapse of Bashar al-Assad's regime, this lack of economic coordination and partnership between Russia and Iran in Syria. So, as for the military cooperation between Russia and Iran, I'm not a military specialist, but at the same time, I would like to emphasize that occasionally there used to be some, but now we will see if it develops into wider range cooperation based on the future developments in the region and beyond. I already mentioned in my presentation that much will depend upon Putin-Trump meeting. I think that the situation in Syria could be discussed during this meeting, most likely. That's my personal point of view as an expert. And we will wait and see.
Dr. Matveev, how do you see that this partnership would affect the balance of power in the Middle East? Because there is a clear alliance between the US and Israel, and there have been a rapprochement going on between the Gulf states and Turkey. Specifically after the aftermath of Bashar al-Assad collapse, and now we have seen a new form of alliance between Russia and Iran that is expected to cover all the spectrum: military, politics, strategic, economics. So, how do you see that this particular alliance between these two states would impact the status quo in the Middle East? And how do you see, would it be beneficial for balancing out in the region, or would it lead to the disruption in the balance of power?
You know, as it comes to this cooperation between my country, between Russia and Iran, I think a nightmare for Israel could be the emergence of nuclear Iran. Here, I also would like to express my strictly personal point of view as an expert. You know, in politics, there are some topics which have vital importance for the countries, for any country, including my country, Russia. So Ukraine is a vital point for Russia, much more important as compared to the Middle East. So for Russia, we will do our best just for the victory. And that means that we could use different tools of pressure upon Trump and the United States in this respect, including the Iranian factor. Similarly, I believe that the Iranians will do the same from their part, using this treaty as a tool for putting much pressure upon Washington, saying that if Washington proceeds with the hostile anti-Iranian actions, that will mean that will mean much more close military cooperation between Russia and Iran on Ukraine. So I think this is one of just a few points very important for Trump, because he is under very huge pressure from Israel and from the Israeli lobbies inside the United States. So he simply cannot neglect this pressure inside the United States. So if there are real concessions, not rhetorical, but real concessions on Ukraine, I think that further cooperation between Russia and Iran, military cooperation, will be very limited. But if Trump does not agree on any real, I emphasize here, real concessions for Putin, that will mean that there could be much more cooperation between Russia and Iran in different spheres. I mean, military cooperation, and not only military cooperation only, but also for cooperation in the region. So that means, answering your question, that means that all these could have deep implications, not only the Middle East region, but beyond it as well. So it's crucial to understand, vital to understand. As for is it good or bad for the region? Well, in politics, there is no such things as good or bad. There are countries' interests. And again, I would like to emphasize that if it comes to the survival of Russia, for instance, well, we can use any tools, absolutely any tools, to ensure our victory. So that means that there could be different developments on this Russian-Iranian track. Well, thank you very much. I think that I can do my best to answer several questions from the chat. Okay, so the first question is, what implications does this partnership have for the balance of power in the region, particularly with regards of the US and its allies? Well, I think that the Iranian factor I already mentioned, the United States will have to take into account this factor regardless of their view on Russia as a weak country, not a weak country, but the Iranian factor is very substantial for the Americans because of the Israelis. Well, here I don't speak about Israel, because for Israel, again, I would like to emphasize that could be like a nightmare to have nuclear Iran. This will be like an existential threat number one for the whole existence of the Jewish state in the Middle East. So again, it's very important for Israel. And I think that the Israelis will do their best to press upon Trump to make him make concessions for Putin in terms of Ukraine, not to let the Iran becoming nuclear. Because the Middle East and the existence of similarly, as for Russia, Ukraine is number one priority. For the Israelis, is Iran number one priority. So the second question is, can this treaty be the deterrence for Israel and the United States and balance the situation for Iran due to Hezbollah and Syria collapse? Well, I think those are different levels. So the axis of resilience created by Tehran specifically for a proxy war with Israel, well, definitely there have been several blows from Israel on this axis. First of all, Hamas, and then Hezbollah, and then Syria. But that's a different level, absolutely. So if it comes to nuclear Iran, that's completely different level for Israel. It could not be compared to those of factors of Hezbollah and former Syrian regime and the situation in Syria. Although the Israelis have been making efforts in Syria itself, for instance, deploying forces and Hermon and etc., but nevertheless, it's absolutely a lower level as compared to this problem of Iran as possibly nuclear power in the near future. So it could not; those could not be compared with each other. Can this agreement help both countries counter Western sanctions? No. There will be possible strengthening of Western sanctions if Iranians manage to agree with Trump that the Americans are ready to weaken the sanctions or for lifting some of them in exchange of low profile of cooperation between Tehran and Moscow and Ukraine, it could lead to certain lifts of certain sanctions. But generally speaking, it's too early to say anything about it, just to elaborate on possible scenarios, not more. In accordance with the treaty, youth cooperation will be one of the key factors influencing the partnership between the two countries. What areas of youth cooperation find more promising? Well, it's about academic cooperation, scientific, technical. If you talk about academic cooperation, it's about launching double diploma programs and academic mobility and regular exchanges of delegations comprised of students, postgraduate students, young scholars, and etc. So I recognize those trends and projects as most promising. Not mentioning here possible forums, regular forums, youth forums, etc. Between our countries with the involvement of Russian regions and Iranian provinces. There is another sign. What perspectives can BRICS give our countries? Well, BRICS is a promising platform for generating constructive ideas. For instance, in terms of de-dollarization of trade, economic relations, launching common projects in high techs, overcoming this technological dependence of the global south on the global north, but here we speak about the west, to withstand this Western pressure using neo-colonial methods and etc. So again, I recognize this treaty is a promising treaty in terms of BRICS as well. So I've done my best to answer this question from the chat. Now, yes. Again, Dr.
Yes, Dr. Matveev.
Yes, the floor is yours again. I think you're welcome. Yes.
Just last two questions before we sign off for today. It was indeed a very, very insightful discussion, and you have provided quite an elaborative stance on this pertinent topic. My first question is that given your presentation and your analysis, it seems that both Russia and Iran are eyeing to utilize this treaty as a leveraging factor for negotiations with the current US administration headed by Donald Trump. So do you think that it would transform into something into some practical sense, or it is just a bargaining tool for both Russia and Iran to put pressure on Donald Trump?
Well, I already mentioned that several times in my presentation and answering your questions, but I would like to draw attention one more time towards the fact that it is not a merely bargaining tool. The content of the priorities of the implementation of this treaty, because not by case just being named as comprehensive treaty. So it depends upon the behavior of the West, but not the treaty itself. So again, I would like to outline one more time that if it comes to concessions from the West, future implementation of this comprehensive treaty would be about trade, economic cooperation, cooperation within the framework of BRICS, making a very positive example for other BRICS countries, for countries in Eurasia. But if it comes to no concessions from the West, no positive movements, strengthening of sanctions against Iran and Russia. So that means that we will do our best to concentrate our efforts on military cooperation and political military cooperation between our countries. So it's not merely bargaining tool anyway.
Okay, very well described, Dr. Matveev. And last question, do you see that similar sort of agreements of other countries of the region?
Can you repeat, because there was some gap? Yes, can you repeat the question, please?
Can you hear me, Dr. Matveev?
Yes, right now, yes. I can.
I was basically asking that do you see that similar sort of agreement of Russia could be replicated with other countries of the region as well? Or would it be specific towards Iran only?
Well, we already have similar, not the same, but similar, quite similar agreements with Belarus and with North Korea. And,
no, I'm talking specifically about the Middle East and South Asia.
The Middle East, well, I don't believe that right now, here I would like to express my strictly personal view, that right now, there could be similar agreements like with Iran in the region. But nevertheless, I think that one cannot rule out ad hoc cooperation, enhancing of cooperation between Russia and GCC states, for instance, on different topics, and within the framework of BRICS as well. So these are promising tracks of cooperation between Russia and states in the region.
Thank you, Dr. Mitmi, for your time and incredible discussion that you have quite insightfully described your views on this pertinent topic. I hope that our audience would be very much benefited from your insights. At least I am. And you have pointed out some of some of the very pertinent topics in this regard. Specifically, you talk about the three versions of Russia role in Syria from the Iranian perspective. You have also outlined the possible scenarios in which the defense cooperation would take priority, or economic cooperation would take priority, or it could pave the way for Iranian nuclearization if Iran was attacked by Israel and others. And you have also predicted that it is too early to say whether it would be a realpolitik agreement or a declarative act, but it would entail the entire spectrum of arenas in terms of cooperation and coordination between Russia and Iran because of the entailing of world comprehensive. So with this, I hope our audience would be quite...
Dr. Nakwi, excuse me to interrupt you, but there is one more important, rather provocative, but important and interesting question in the chat. So I beg your pardon, but
yes, for sure. If you would like to
otherwise
answer,
the audience will think that I refuse to answer this question for certain reasons, and I don't like it. So I will try to give my answer to this question as well. So this will be, to emphasize here, that will be the very last question. No other questions, but I would like to answer this question. So the question is, we don't see this agreement would work as Russia couldn't help to save Assad at the last stages, and nor it informed Iran about the situation. Dating back to history regarding the loyalty to the agreement, will Russia help Iran in Libya, Yemen, and Iraq? Well, first of all, I would like to emphasize here that the Iranians knew perfectly well about the developments in Syria. It was not a surprise from military point of view, because the Iranians, according to Astana agreements, in May 2017, there were de-escalation zones with the presence of Russia and Iran around Idlib. So it was absolutely not possible for Iranians to know nothing about the developments of situation. So it was about the weakening of the axis of resilience after, these blows on Hamas and especially on Hezbollah and etc. So that was the Iranians asked me in Tehran why Russia did not support Bashar al-Assad. My answer was for the same reason as Iran. You did not support Bashar al-Assad for the same reason. So that's another very important topic for another event. I'm pretty sure about it. But to make the long story short, as for loyalty, not loyalty, well, I do not understand such things in politics. Well, it's about national interests, first of all. About helping Iran in Libya, Yemen, or Iraq. Well, Russia is not a member, informal member of this informal axis of resilience. So one should always bear in mind that. So Russia is not a member of this axis of resilience, okay? So Russia has diplomatic relations with Israel. There are contacts, including very high-level contacts between Russia and Israel. And we recognize the existence of the state of Israel. So we do have Israeli embassy in Moscow, and our embassy in Israel. So that's the reality. If it comes about Libya, well, Libya and Iran, I don't think that Libya is number one priority for the Iranians, by the way. And Yemen, we are ready to develop contacts and relations with all parties in Yemen, with Sana'a, with Adan, with different forces representing different groups of population in Yemen. I think Russia could play together with the United Nations, could play a role in facilitating a long-lasting peace in Yemen, taking into consideration rather good relations between Russia and different Yemeni forces. So that's very important. So here we could help Iran in case of the necessity, in case of a request from the Iranian side to find a solution for the Yemeni crisis. Although one shouldn't exaggerate the capabilities of Russia in that respect, but still, Russia could play a role. That's my opinion as an expert. In Iraq, Prime Minister Soudani, when he was in Moscow, he made a declaration very important about his readiness to develop cooperation with Russia. So it's very important to understand that Russia here deals with the with the Iraqi government. Okay, so we're not dealing with militias, with the Shia separately from Sunni or from Kurds. We're dealing with the Iraqi people. We're dealing with the Iraqi government. So that's another very important point to understand. So it is not about loyalty or not having any loyalty and etc. Again, thank you very much for asking these questions. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Looking forward for further cooperation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matveev. And I think with these remarks of yours, that national interests take priority before loyalty. And from the state perspective, it is essential to make contacts with every segment of the society and at the state level. And there would be no differentiations in terms of tribe, religion, or identity. I sign off from here with much regard and much thanks to you for sparing time for this eminent speaker series. And hopefully in the future as well, we would continue to invite you to give us the lecture and presentation and give us the understanding about the Russian position on the Middle East, South Asia, and other parts of the world, for which both the Russian interest and Pakistani interest could be aligned in this regard. Thank you so much, Dr. Mitmi, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.